Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parasha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Maludimim in Israel. The wonders of science are all around us. It is difficult to spend even 1 minute of our lives totally divorced from the discoveries and the technology that has come from this amazing field of study. Think about where you are right now and what you are doing. It is a good bet that almost everything you are using or is in your vicinity is a product of scientific technology. The things made out of plastic that are everywhere you turn, perhaps even inside you, are a result of technology. Every one of them is really reconstituted oil, itself accessible through relatively recent inventions. Whatever is made of metal is derived from a combination of ancient and modern technology, the science of metallurgy. Even wood, which is about as natural as things get these days, is available to be shaped and built into the arrangements that we use because we have created devices that can do precisely that. The foods we eat, assuming they are not completely artificial, are also a combination of natural and human invention. The ancient technologies of agriculture and the modern variants of it, generated through the science of genetics, has brought about a food supply that can support billions of people, for better or worse. Every one of our modern medicines, even those which were derived from natural substances, is a product of this branch of science and technology. We would still be picking weeds and herbs and perhaps evoking the help of supernatural means if it weren't for this gift to ourselves. One can argue that these things sometimes do more harm than good, but at the end of the day, almost everybody takes them when the going gets tough. The entire field may have sprung from old practices with herbs and concoctions, but it has now reached the point of manipulating the very molecules that interact with the body to improve health. Perhaps the greatest benefit has come in the form of energy. Everything used to function through natural means, such as gravity or the wind. When we invented things like the wheel, it greatly eased the burden of human toil. With each invention over the centuries, things got a little easier and much more was made accessible to our incessant needs. Until recently, we were restricted to either human, animal, or natural power. But within the past century and a half, we have replaced almost all of that through the breakthroughs of electricity and fossil fuels, to say nothing of facilitating natural power through human invention. Harnessing the forces of electricity and magnetism, in addition to the forces locked inside the atom, has made our lives easier 1,000-fold. We can do everything with the flip of a switch, and we have access to everything through the press of a few buttons. Soon, we won't even have to do that. We could go on and on with this, but we all know this already. It is all so much a part of our lives that we can scarcely imagine being without any of it. It would be like going back to the Stone Age. It is difficult to really believe that anybody would trade all that for a thoroughly natural life, no matter how tempting the blissfulness of such a life. We can all talk about such bliss, but at the end of the day, we all go back to our phones and our video devices. A couple of days in the wild on a camping trip, complete with a smattering of technology that our great-grandparents couldn't dream of, is more than enough for practically everyone. It's all great and it's all wonderful, but we all know deep down that this blessing has come with a huge price. We can no longer do the simple things that our ancestors did 100 years ago routinely. We are even losing the ability to write with a pencil, itself a product of technology. Even something as modern as a photograph no longer looks acceptable unless it has been enhanced by computerized tricks. We are no longer fascinated with the world as it is. We need to see it through the lens of some version of virtual reality. We all know that there will come a day in the not-so-far future in which nothing will be the simple reality of the world. It will have to be passed through some technological gizmo and then zapped into our brains. Perhaps this explains the still prevalent interest in the past, either in the form of history, literature, or the arts. People actually did things then, or so we imagine, and we admire them for their ability to fight through the challenges of a life devoid of the technology we depend upon. We can read a book about distant ages in the past, real or imaginary, and wonder what it was like to live back then. This is one of the reasons people still read an ancient text like the Bible. It shows the real struggles of life and not the artificial knockoffs that we face. This week's parasha is called Vayishlach, which means he sent. This title refers to Jacob sending out messengers ahead of a fateful meeting with his long-estranged brother Esau, with whom he ran away from 20 years earlier. Jacob feared that Esau was still seeking revenge on him for nabbing the primary blessing of their father Isaac through deception and cunning. Isaac intended that blessing to go to Esau, the oldest of his twin sons, but Jacob, through the planning of his mother Rivkah, ended up running off with it. After 20 years in the East, building up a family complete with 4 wives and at least 12 children, he has returned to his ancestral homeland that was promised to him. He knows that Esau is out looking for him with a small army of men. He plans and he sets things up, and in the end, he manages to appease Esau with gifts, favorable impressions, and talk. In the end, they go their separate ways. That should have been the end of Esau's part in the biblical story, since he no longer plays any significant role. It turns out, however, that almost half of the parasha deals with him one way or another. While Jacob is the main protagonist throughout the whole thing, Esau takes up the last quarter of the verses with a long list of his lineage. Why this much space is devoted to this lineage is a bit of a mystery. It's not as if any of these names plays any role whatsoever in the rest of the story. The names are almost completely unknown except for their inclusion in this list. It goes on for about 40 verses, an interminably long time for the Bible. This list is so impenetrable that almost anybody who speaks about this parsha ignores it entirely. It is like a black hole in the text that is read but completely glossed over. It starts with Esau himself, with whom we are already quite familiar. 3 times in this list, it is mentioned that Esau is Edom, which means red, the name that he was given in last week's parsha after he traded his birthright to Jacob for some red stew. But in the context of this list, the intention is to associate him with the ancient nation of Edom, which lived in what is now southern Israel. Traditionally, Esau is considered to be the ultimate ancestor of this nation, and all these names in this list figured in their tribal history one way or another. Deeply buried in the middle of all this is a name that hardly gets noticed. Quote, "These are the children of Sivon, Aya and Anna. This was Anna who found the mules in the desert when he herded donkeys for his father Tzivon." This easily overlooked verse is one of the only ones that gives any sort of description as to the activities of the people listed. In this case, the description concerns this business of herding donkeys and finding mules. There is no further elaboration as to what this was all about. The rabbinic explanation of this puzzling verse is fascinating. In one approach, this Anna is determined to have been conceived through incest between his father and his father's mother. As unlikely as this sounds, it is borne out by the fact that a few verses earlier, Anna and Tzivon are listed as brothers, the children of Seir. The rabbinic take on this is that his incestuous origin induced him to bring into the world an unnatural product of the mating of a horse and a donkey. In other words, he didn't find these mules, he bred them. He used ancient technology to bring a new species into the world. In an alternative explanation of the creation of mules, they are described as having come about through the implanting of divine knowledge into the mind of the first man, Adam, at the final stage of creation. Along with the creation of fire, the origin of the mule is seen as something which required divine assistance to spur the human mind on in ingenuity. According to this approach, the mule was something that God wanted to be brought into the world and not some evil byproduct of incest. It seems that something as basic and as down to earth as a mule was the subject of a moral debate among the ancient rabbis. Was it a good thing or a bad thing? The jury is still out. This debate concerns more than just mules. It really cuts to the core of all of technology. The mule was an ancient form of science created by the unnatural mating of 2 different species. It likely could only have come about through human intervention. It was an early form of genetic engineering. Mules cannot reproduce since the chromosomes from their parents don't quite match up, even though they contain the same number. Mules were extremely useful up until modern times. They could carry much more than a donkey and didn't have the problematic need to mate. But were they something that should have been created? God obviously didn't create them. So why should we go about playing God and producing them? On the other hand, their potential to be created was always there. It just needed a little assistance from the mind or from above. This classic debate carries through to today. While nobody is about to shut off their electricity and live in a cave, we all recognize that the stakes are quite high in what we are doing. A recent article on artificial intelligence stated that many of the scientists at the top of this field believe that there is about a 10% chance that AI will eventually lead to the annihilation of humanity. How they came up with this number is anybody's guess, but the people developing the technology realize that they are quite literally playing with fire. But there is no way to stop this progress. Once that wheel was invented, once fire was created, once the mule proved that we can play God, there was no turning back. For better or worse, we are stuck on this journey. There is no way off at this point. Perhaps all we can do is recognize that at the end of the day, despite all of our technological prowess, we are still just feeble human beings living on a planet with little control over all but the most basic things. We live and we die. We have hang-ups and moments of ecstasy and clarity. We have joys and sorrows. Our real task, perhaps, is not to find mules or plastics or digital toys, but to find ourselves wherever we may be. If we have discovered that, we will have a treasure worth more than all the technology in the world. Shabbat Shalom.